City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission is hereby called to order. The chair has determined that we have a quorum with all commissioners present. Welcome back, Dick. We missed you. The first order of business is the approval of minutes from the April 24, 2018 meeting. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second, David? All in favor of approval of the minutes? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the approval of claims. Cam, would you like to comment on those?
I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary on these claims, so if unless there are questions, I don't think I have any comments.
Okay. Questions from the commissioners on the claims? Cam, I have one question. The Taft Dennis Hollister billing shows that the billing is for February. Is that correct, or am I reading that wrong?
No, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So
there's some lead time on processing things to get before you for approval as a claim. So I think I recently submitted invoices for March and April that should show up on the June, maybe together in June. But I think there's just some lag in the controller's office, which is fine with us.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Hearing no other questions or comments concerning the billing, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Second by Bruce. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Cam, next on the agenda, I believe is a staff report.
Yes. First, we talked previously about a coalition put together to apply for an arts and culture grant product released from the Lilly Endowment. Just in follow-up to that, I'm happy to tell you that the Lawrence proposal has made it to the second round. I think there were 300-some proposals, and again, this is just Marion County related. It was I think the ask for the Lawrence cultural campus here on the fort was in the $7.5 or $8 million range, so a hefty ask, and at least we've made it through the first cut, and that leads to, at least in the near term, a meeting on June 1 with endowment employees and officials for some one-on-one feedback or direct feedback, where we'll take a group down, including Judy Byron from the theater at the fort. I think Mayor Collier and I will both go. Context design was involved in some of the planning aspects. So it'd be good to hear feedback one-on-one, and that'll help the full application. That will be the next step, and I believe that's due in July. So good news there, at least that it made it to the next round of consideration. So we'll hope that it continues to go further. Moving on from there, then the Trades District RFP, as approved previously by this commission, a request for proposals for 7600, 7602 Pendleton Pike, and 4326 Cellar Street. All together, we often call those 7600 Pendleton Pike, but property owned by the Redevelopment Commission, right there by 465, was initially published just this past Saturday. The request for proposals was published, and responses are due on June 5th. So I think later in the agenda, you'll note there's a new business item to formally vote to adopt a special meeting on June 5th. It will be really for the purpose of opening any proposals received pursuant to that RFP. And that is related to I guess the one thing that in the claims that you just approved, there is a an item for publication through the Indianapolis Star in accordance with state law. So that amount relates to publication of the Trades District RFP. And then after that, absent questions, I believe we have Bill Anthony, our Public Works Director here in the City of Lawrence, and a representative of Shrewsbury, Sam Robertson, an engineer there, to update you all as requested with regard to some stormwater improvements in the Trades District area. That we know there's some longstanding concern about stormwater drainage there, and these projects are designed to alleviate that. So I'll let Bill and Sam speak to some of the details about those projects.
Good afternoon, Bill Anthony, City of Lawrence Department of Public Works. As requested, I have Sam Robertson here from Shrewsbury, who is the lead designer for the Lawrence Trades District drainage improvements on behalf of the City of Lawrence and the City of Indianapolis, the DPW. He's also the lead designer on the Upper Pogues Run detention basin that's currently in design and getting set for construction. So those two projects kind of mesh or go together, so we felt it would be best to give you an overview of both of those so you could understand how they're going to work together to improve the drainage for the folks and the businesses that are located back in the Trades District. We've had meetings with the business owners back there specifically to discuss MOT or maintenance of traffic concerns to get their buy-in so that we're not unduly interrupting their business during construction. And we had a lot of excitement and a lot of agreement for the needs for this project. So this has been a collaborative effort between the City of Lawrence and the Marion County Stormwater District via Indianapolis DPW. And Shrewsbury as well on the design. So with that being said, I've asked Sam here. He's going to give you a very high-level overview. I think Cam may have handed out some papers with design and kind of what Sam's going to talk about. So he's here as the technical guy. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them when he's done. All right?
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bill.
guys.
Good afternoon. Yeah, like as Bill mentioned, we have a couple of handouts. One's 8.5 by 11 sheet that just gives a kind of a summary of the two projects. The first project, the one that's kind of being designed, was designed first, is the Upper Pogues Run project. And the status of that design is the design's 100% complete, and we're getting ready to bid that project. It's going to bid later this summer. We're looking, I think, about July on the bid date on that. With starting construction in September and then finishing it up early next year. That project was done first because it's a regional detention basin. It's on the north side of the CSX Railroad, but it also includes some new pipes under the CSX Railroad that are twin 36-inch pipes. The existing 30-inch concrete pipe under the railroad that drains the whole entire Lawrence Trades District area. It was found to be undersized and cause flooding. You get a big storm event, it floods right there at the railroad and kind of leads its way up into other areas. So those needed to be upsized, but in order to upsize that, those flows were going to increase afterwards, and so that doesn't flood other folks downstream. They're doing the regional detention pond that'll hold it there, and that regional detention pond is going to be in the existing soccer park. It's not going to affect the park use, but it is going to regrade that park, lowering it. I think we looked at it, how often we predicted that's going to flood as about, a 5-year kind of interval. And then it would just be for a really large storm event and then go away after a day after that. So that project's looking to be late this year, construction, or late this year and early next year, finishing it up. And it's about I think I put 1.2 million. That might have been an earlier estimate. We're about 1 million, 1 to 1.2 million on the estimated construction cost. We'll find out what the real cost is once we bid it. But that kind of that project was done first to give that an outlet for the Lawrence Trades District. You guys are probably more concerned with getting that flooding reduced there in Lawrence, on the Lawrence Trades District area. That sheet's on the, I've got a 11 by 17 showing that. That's the trunk line there. That's I think that is a 48-inch elliptical pipe, so it's like 29 by 48, I think, is the size of it. I don't have the plan and profile here, but it's that takes in the whole drainage area over here and takes it down to the railroad where these are going to be. Then the pipes from the Upper Pogues Run are going to be increasing the size at the railroad there. Some of the major flooding problems in this area were at along Sellers Street and Cruise Drive. There's also some flooding over on Halls and Record Street. We've got pretty good documentation of the flooding there. It really gets pretty bad at Cruise and Sellers and down in that area. And I think over the years, it's just kind of been a hodgepodge of storm infrastructure put in. There's a lot of different types of inlets and types of pipe. And it's kind of, different developments came in and built at different times. And usually the next development built a little higher than the previous one. So it's kind of pushed the drainage around and there's been some problems down there. So that's what this project will be, to alleviate that flooding. We're in these plans are 60%. This is just the overview sheet. This was actually a sheet index page. We have the other. So this doesn't show a lot of detail on this page. It's just kind of the big picture of it. We're 60% going to 90. Our key is to get this project, the Lawrence Trades project, we want to bid that next late winter, early spring. DPW's purchasing department closes around Christmas, and we want to be ready to bid that when they open back up. And I think they're first eligible to bid around February. So that's we're looking to have this one all finished up on design and ready to go at that point. So we'll be able to start construction probably spring of next year, spring to summer next year. This one will be going underway.
Well, the bid would be in early 2019.
Yes. Yeah, that's the schedule this one should be finished next year then too. So all the construction will be in 2019. And this one's about $900,000 is the estimated construction cost.
Just to be clear on this part of it, you're going to write it late winter. You're going to bid it early spring. Did I write that down right? And then construction starts in the spring.
It'll take a few months for them to get through the procurement, after they get their bids in and they select the contractor, then it's usually a couple months after that. So if we get it, in the late winter, early spring, it'll probably be, middle of the spring, late spring time where kind of ready to start things.
Late spring.
Yeah.
So completion would be?
2019. They should be able to get this done within the calendar year in 2019 if we get it, bid that early. So, which we're planning on it.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
After all these years.
Yeah, it should give a good backbone for that area for drainage, and it'll, include some resurfacing of roads and things like that. As we won't just like specifically there on Sellers. I'm looking at it. That's going to need to be repaved the whole road there, and other areas too, as far as Halls and some areas over there that will probably be resurfacing. Those stretches of the street. So if it's off the road, I think they maybe will just do off the pavement over there, but. A lot of it's going to get resurfaced too.
So all the roads rehabilitation is included in those costs?
Yeah, right. I don't think we're resurfacing all of Allen though. I think it's more on Sellers and Hall.
In the Hall, okay. Questions from the commissioners?
And once this is completed, then that whole area should not experience the type of flooding that the businesses are experiencing today.
Right. Yeah, that's the purpose of this, is to reduce those flooding, alleviate the flooding in those areas. They'll be connecting into storm infrastructure, like if you look at Sellers and Allen Street, those are connecting to some existing storms, so it's planned to be able to take stormwater from those areas as well.
Well, that would be great, because I know the business owners down there been quite concerned about it for some time.
Yeah, I've been out there when it's really flooding pretty bad, and up into close to the buildings and things like that, and on the cellars and cruise area there. So, yeah.
Well, and this is also going to resolve the residential flooding issue north of the railroad tracks?
Right, that's the north of the railroad tracks it'll help some of the Ricard Avenue, or that's more the Pogues Run project we're looking at.
Yeah.
That was kind of discovered during the design, and the high water signs were a giveaway on Ricard Avenue. So we're gonna be taking some of that and helping that flooding on that street as well, yeah.
That's great. Other questions?
No, I think it's great work.
Well, if anything comes up, my contact information is on that sheet.
Thank you very
If you
much.
have any questions, so, all right, yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
That fits nicely
So,
with our
so
trees.
good progress, and then if you've been by the property that's currently out for RFP, you'll note some equipment on the site and some piles of gravel that's related to the sanitary sewer improvements that are also significant and should positively impact the site that the RDC owns and is marketing, moving a lot of that infrastructure out from under the middle of the site around the perimeter so that it will set up better for development. So together, I think sanitary and storm sewer drainage will be much improved in the very near future, which is good. And then lastly, for the staff update, you'll note certainly there's some new business items related to Meyer Plastics. I've been able to speak with each of you in the interim since the last meeting about developments there. Meyer Plastics, the company, remains very certainly interested in potentially moving to Lawrence, and we've sort of tried to encapsulate what incentives would enable them and trigger their doing so in the term sheet that was circulated with the agenda. I think with regard to RDC action items this evening, one would be there's a remediation agreement that speaks to covering some remaining work just to get the site to a regulatory closure through IDEM, utilizing some escrowed sale proceeds between Meyer Plastics and the seller, Mitchell Group, and reimbursement for a pollution legal liability policy there, and the other side being creation of a new allocation area, after which the Economic Development Commission will meet to initially notice an intent to issue bonds there that would be loaned to Meyer as part of this project. And that will have a separate but parallel approvals course that will go through the council, as will the initial declaratory resolution creating the new allocation area. The next step would be council, then it would return to the RDC in June for a confirmatory resolution to create that new allocation area around the project site. So that's kind of sets us up for the next phase, which is new business. Unless there are questions at this juncture, I'm happy to move on to that.
Okay, so if I get what you just said, Cam, we've got 3 items to be covered here. One is the economic development plan for Meyer Plastics. 2 is, this is all leading up to the resolutions. 2 would be the economic development loan remediation agreement and the issuance, okay? And then 3 is the actual remediation agreement. So would it be appropriate to ask the commissioners if on any of these items they might have questions or comments? And Cam, this is, I guess that note of silence is a tribute to your writing capabilities in these 3 documents.
But I can't take credit.
Yeah, well, now this is not a question. This is am I understanding this correctly?
Okay.
Under the city's obligations, the RDC will assume responsibility for and take necessary, I'm on item number 2.0 of the remediation agreement.
Okay.
city and/or RDC shall assume responsibility for and take necessary steps at the RDC's sole cost to investigate, abate, monitor, contain, and so on and so on and so on. Who's going to do that? Can you tell me when the city takes responsibility for doing that, who does that?
Who does the actual work necessary?
Yes, who does that?
It'd be an environmental engineering contractor.
Thank you. That's over and above, is that correct?
Over and above what?
Over and above the costs that we've outlined here. Would that be an additional cost?
No. So that's the basic contractual obligation is to
So that's
oversee that process
It's all inclusive.
by and through an environmental
Have
engineering.
we selected that environmental engineering firm that would actually perform that work for the RDC?
We have not.
Okay. Okay, but that is included.
Right.
Okay, great. Then I'm backing up now that I understand that part, backing up one. Owner's obligations. The city shall be responsible for any and all costs that may be incurred in connection with the ERC, including without limitation, the operation, maintenance, and monitoring obligations associated with the vapor, et cetera, et cetera. Was there a point in time where we thought we would be able to get some relief on having to do some of this, or the necessity by virtue of the work that's already been done?
I'm not
This
sure.
implies that there's more work to be done. Is that right?
More work to be done in what respect? Yeah, the more work to be done is really about following some groundwater monitoring protocol to establish a continued downward trend, a continued attenuation of levels of groundwater constituents.
Okay, so and I apologize for this. I can't be any clearer than I am. I'm not, because I'm not familiar with this process.
Sure.
It says, including without limitation, the operation, maintenance, and monitoring obligations associated with. I mean, the city's responsible for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this the engineering firm again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's really the answer I was looking for. Thank you. And those are my only questions.
So I think the first resolution is number 4, 2018, which is the adoption of.
Right.
Really, it's a twofold.
I want to make sure that
Oh, sure.
we're good with these. Are we good with these, gentlemen? Okay. I think they're well-written, very understandable. Yeah. With the exception of my questions. But now I understand who does what.
And I've read them, and I'm fine with them. I just would kind of like to know that our counsel, Mr. David Johnson, has read them and he's approved. I know he's not here, but.
He's not, and that would be, it's too late, but an interesting a time nonetheless to inform you all that David welcomed his second child just on Thursday last week, a son. So he's, I think, been in and out a little bit since then, and for good reason. But yes, as we were compiling these, they were mostly drafted in conjunction with Brian Bosma, the attorney that we retained to do the bond work and create the allocation area. And from my review and David's as well, was copied on everything. So that his feedback is that he doesn't have concerns. So
we have Brian's approval, your approval, and David's approval.
Yeah, right.
So with that, gentlemen, can we move to resolution number 4? A declaratory resolution for the City of Lawrence, Indiana Redevelopment Commission removing, you said 4 is next, right?
Yes.
removing parcels from the Pendleton Pike redevelopment area, declaring the parcels as a new economic development area, approving a plan for the area, declaring part of the area an allocation area, and taking other actions related thereto, as was explained in these prior documents. Questions, comments from the commissioners on resolution number 4?
I wasn't sure on Cam's response. The council has seen all of these or has not seen all of them?
Has not, but will.
Oh.
They'll need to approve.
As will the council, as will, well, he does by virtue of the city, because he has to look at it, absolutely, and then the council has to approve it as well.
I was referring to our legal.
Our legal counsel, right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the common council. You mean legal counsel? Yes. Right. They were drafted by an attorney retained by the commission to do the same and reviewed by David and by me. Yes.
I'm sorry, I jumped in.
My mistake. Wrong council.
Wrong council. Bruce, go to, on resolution 4, go to 14. And in the body of that, it says, the city's planning commission, board of zoning appeals. I mean, a lot of people have to look at this. Good. Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt resolution 4, 2018?
I'll make the motion.
Bruce Kimmerly makes a motion, second on the resolution. And David? All in favor by show of hands? Approved. You need everybody to sign this, don't you?
Gotta get in and swim at some time.
Thank you. And moving to Resolution 5, 2018, a resolution of the City of Lawrence, Indiana Redevelopment Commission approving the terms of a remediation agreement with Meyer Plastics and the extension thereof, and taking other actions related thereto. Questions from the commissioners on this document? This one's, yeah.
I think I would only clarify that's execution thereof. I think maybe you said extension. I want to make sure that the approval is that it be executed and carried out.
I'm not sure we can just. Say again.
I think when you read the title of the resolution, you said
I read it wrong?
You said extension instead of execution. I just wanted to make it clear that it's really an approval.
An execution
of the
thereof.
execution. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Hearing no questions, may I have a motion?
No, I'm sorry. The remediation agreement is what we've been given as Appendix 4. Is that right? That we're approving here?
Yes.
Yes.
And why, and why are we approving this if, as I look at the remediation agreement, it doesn't show us as a party to the agreement? See what I mean?
I do. I note that at the top, although throughout of course, paragraph C says by and through its redevelopment commission. I think the ultimate party really probably is the city. It is acting through its redevelopment commission in this sense, in terms of
I'm
giving
sorry,
this.
I can't hear a thing you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure, sorry. The ultimate party here is the city. It's acting by and through you all as the redevelopment commission in agreeing to get the site to NFA status, regulatory closure through IDEM. So I think that's the distinction. The RDC is the operative vehicle here, but the party is defined as the city of Lawrence.
And just to follow up with Commissioner Sullivan's comment, I see here on the signature line, we have the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission, and this has to go through the council as well, correct, for approval?
No, I don't anticipate that it does.
You're not satisfied, Commissioner Sullivan, with this?
Maybe council could explain to us what would be our liability? What is our liability under this remediation agreement?
I think the simplest way to put it is the liability is to get the site to an NFA status and to reimburse Meyer for the PLL and to hold a self-insured retention aside for the period of time until which the site is closed.
But your question was, what's our liability?
And so it is whatever it would take
Yeah.
to get the site to an NFA status.
Yes.
But isn't that why we're buying the insurance policy?
No.
No,
No, those are separate items. Yeah.
separate items.
And so it would be accurate to say that the city of Lawrence is undertaking the obligation to get this property to an NFA status, and is agreeing with Meyer to spend whatever it will take to do that.
Yeah, by and through the redevelopment commission, yes, it will get the site to closure period.
And then the redevelopment commission is taking on that, to the extent that there is expense associated with that, it will be an expense of the redevelopment commission, not an expense of the general taxpayers of the city of Lawrence.
Correct.
To the extent that the redevelopment commission has resources to do that.
Correct.
And we're also agreeing that we're going to pay the premium on this insurance policy, and there's no limit in this agreement as to what that premium might be. It's just whatever the premium will be to buy this $7.5 million policy, but we estimate that to be $18,000.
We estimate it to be, yeah, I think $85,000 to $90,000 is the
Sorry, it'd be
85 to 90,000 is the total. And that's, I think we put in the plan that was adopted as part of resolution number 4 that we anticipate something around 100,000 just to be safe. But the feedback from the insurance markets currently puts the premium for that amount of coverage for that term at 85 to 90,000.
And that will come out of the general fund of the RDC.
Yes.
And then the deductible on the insurance policy is accounted for where?
We haven't voted on, we voted on 4. We haven't voted.
The second to last sentence of paragraph 2.3.
Of 2.3?
Yes. The RDC shall fund, if and when required, any self-insured retention under the policy until the issuance of the NFA. So that self-insured retention would only be triggered if a claim were made under the policy itself. And so there's not an immediate need to spend that. It's really a factor of an obligation if needed prior to issuance of the NFA. At which point that obligation expires and really reverts to Meyer, because it will be the policy holder. It probably bears.
I don't know if there are any insurance lawyers in the room, but it seems to me a certain lack of precision there in saying it will fund if and when required any self-insured retention. So what does required mean? That is to say, is that the point at which a claim is made? Is it the point at which a claim is incurred? Is it the point at which the check has to be actually written? You see what I'm saying? We have a lot of debate in insurance coverage over claims made versus claims incurred policies, and this doesn't use either of that language. I suppose we could just say, let's just hope we don't have any claims and we'll fight it out. We'll argue for the interpretation most favorable to us when it happens. But what would your understanding be? Would it be if a claim, we're talking here about third-party lawsuits against Meyer, right?
Yes.
And if a third-party lawsuit was filed against Meyer before the NFA was issued, but it remained unresolved until after the NFA was issued, that is, and then it was resolved contrary in favor of the claimant. My hypothetical okay so far? Clear?
Following.
Such that something would have to be paid from the deductible. I would say, well, it wasn't required until after the NFA was issued, and so we don't have to pay anything. Would that be your understanding?
I like the argument. My concern would be the policy will also include right to a defense of that lawsuit, which the retention is broad enough that I think whoever
we'd want to call on the Well, are we going to have any rights? Are we going to have any rights under this policy at all?
We have included language that if it's possible to include the city, the RDC as an additional insured, that the policy do so and name those entities. That I think the issue that we've heard from the insurers is there's not really an insurable interest because the city will not have any exposure with regard to liability for environmental conditions of the site except by virtue of this contract. So it would only have liability to Meyer to get the site to closure. There would be no recourse from a state regulatory agency to compel the city or the RDC to do any work on the site otherwise, nor from a third party. So the insurers are so far saying there's nothing to insure. So I don't know that we will be. The obligation, when necessary, I think would be triggered by a claim, and I understand I think this is a good question. The contract, the remediation agreement itself is worded in such a way to make that broad, such that prior to the issuance of the NFA, if there were a need to spend this self-insured retention prior to triggering proceeds from the insurance policy, that would be on the Redevelopment Commission. And it would, because it provides a cost of defense, which also counts against limits. I think that would be in the hypothetical you proposed. I think that self-insured retention would be spent prior to the resolution of the.
And when will the remediation agreement be executed?
It would be actually following approval. I believe it would be executed in the near term thereafter. I don't know that I have a date certain.
We wouldn't wait and execute it at closing. In other words, we'd have an obligation if we come in at presumably the insurance policy would be issued at closing, right?
Right.
And if we came in at closing and the premium was $200,000 and the deductible was $500,000, you're saying we would have executed this in advance of closing, and we'd be stuck with that.
No, I didn't mean to say that. I just mean there's not a date certain for the execution of this document. It would make sense to do it at closing. It is a standalone agreement, so it wouldn't have to be done. Certainly, the prior to exchange of executed documents, we'll review what the premium and self-insured retention are going to be. We have some feedback on that and predictability that will be $85,000 to $90,000 for the premium. It's a one-time premium, and $100,000 self-insured retention for the period of time prior to issuance of the NFA. No, I take your point. It would be prudent just to say we'll do it at closing, but certainly not before we see that.
And I'm sorry, you said the $100,000 premium was in the memorandum of understanding, or you said it was in the plan?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was approved as part of our earlier resolution.
Right. The plan is required by state law underlying the creation of the new allocation area, and the plan is informed by the term sheet, which was circulated. That term sheet was circulated just for that purpose, to inform to show how the plan came to be. But it does mention. Well, by point of fact, it says an estimated $85,000 in the plan.
I'm sorry, Cam, I'm just not finding the stuff on the remediation agreement in the plan.
bottom two, page 2 at the bottom, under last.
Third paragraph under description of the project.
Well, I don't think we can. Very much we can do about this one.
And do we have any write-up on the escrow?
No, not right now. The escrow will be created when the property transacts from Mitchell to Meyer. And they are, I believe, scheduled to close currently in July. That may be extended to August.
Well, you'll remember that we had a discussion that this is an unusual, it seemed unusual to me to call this an escrow because the money is coming to us. And I just would want to make sure that the documentation, we can call it anything we want, obviously.
Right.
But the ordinary meaning of an escrow in a sale of real estate would be that the seller would escrow a certain amount of the purchase price for a particular purpose, and then the amount, if it wasn't needed for that purpose, then the amount would go to the seller.
Yes.
But what we're saying here is that in fact, at closing, $150,000 of the sale proceeds will be paid to the Redevelopment Commission, and that we will escrow it for purposes of applying towards the any obligations that we have to get to NFA. And then to the extent that we don't need it for that, then it will become part of the general fund of the Redevelopment Commission. And if it turns out not to be enough to get us to NFA, it'll be a general obligation of the Redevelopment Commission to get us there. If that's my understanding of what I'm voting to approve here when when we have this reference to the escrow.
Sure. Couple of clarifications, and I recall the discussion. The proceeds, the amount that will be, again, we'll call it escrow, will be part of the proceeds paid from Meyer to Mitchell. So that will be part of their purchase price, which is, I forget the total, but they will pay that to Mitchell. Mitchell will then put that $150,000 into escrow. So it won't come directly to the Redevelopment Commission. We'll be able to draw from that to accomplish the NFA status and to pay the environmental engineer to do the work necessary to achieve that NFA status. But the money will go from Meyer to Mitchell to escrow for our use. And in both this agreement and the agreement between Meyer and Mitchell, the purchase agreement, which I've seen, speaks to this, that those escrowed proceeds, as opposed to the normal course where anything left over would revert to the seller, anything left over will revert to the Redevelopment Commission.
And so Mitchell will control these funds until things are done?
Not directly. They'll be escrowed, so they'll be overseen by an escrow agent. But yeah, it will put those aside. Now, to your point, would it be possible to instead do that as a Mitchell grants those proceeds to the Redevelopment Commission upon closing? Yes, but the purchase agreement between Meyer and Mitchell predates this agreement and calls it escrow. So as opposed to undoing that term, we've essentially borrowed it for these purposes and allowed the Redevelopment Commission to access those proceeds. And keep whatever is left over.
So, if I understand that scenario, if, as the Redevelopment Commission spends money to get to NFA, it actually will be spending its money, and then it will have to go to Mitchell to get reimbursement from the escrow account?
I think it could, the engineer itself could present its invoices to the escrow account and be paid directly out of it.
I guess I'd like to request that the documentation that the closing be contingent on the Redevelopment Commission having an unrestricted right to withdraw funds from that escrow, either to pay directly or to reimburse the Redevelopment Commission for getting things to NFA. And the simpler the better, but it seems to me we shouldn't have to prove any, well, at least, I mean, obviously, whatever the deal is what the deal is. But as the deal has been explained to me, we're gonna have a $150,000 pot provided to us to get to NFA, which we calculate to be more than sufficient to get us there.
Right.
And I'm willing to vote for whatever the risk is that not on the representations that I've had, that'll be enough to get us there.
Right.
But I just would want to make sure there's no slip between the cup and the lip, that somebody out there at Mitchell or somewhere might be able to deny us access to those funds, which I understand we would have an unrestricted right to get at.
Yeah, good point. I think that's a fair statement, and we will want to see how that's documented.
If we can pay directly out of that amount
Sure.
and not have to run it through and then
Front it and get reimbursed.
reimbursement and do all that other jazz that goes along. I know.
Same. Yeah, I take those as a similar point. It should really be, if we keep what's left anyway, it should just sort of be surrendered to the Redevelopment Commission. I think functionally that's how it will go, but we'll want to make sure that's on paper.
Okay, and upon approval, are they ready to close immediately, pretty soon?
Meyer? Yeah, they would very much like to close in early July so that they can get some asphalt prior to the closure of asphalt plants in the area and start some other things. They also, if they were to extend the purchase agreement, which they may end up doing, because the Redevelopment Commission approvals timeline contemplates under Resolution 4 approval today, and then approval by the council in mid-June, and then a confirmatory resolution by this commission in late June, which enables them to, that creates the allocation area. There's a parallel timeline that involves the Economic Development Commission as the bond issuing authority. It will need to issue 10-day notice, and there will be a public hearing requirement, and the council will need to do probably a bond ordinance, so probably a first and second reading. That may extend the timeline to August, but that creates some interest rate risk for Meyer and potentially some added cost for extending that, et cetera, that they'd rather avoid. So they'd like to close, provided we can illustrate to them that we have the approvals to make this deal happen. They'd like to close in July.
And construction starts?
Yes, yet this year, yes.
Kim, should we have a vote on the mediation agreement as well? I mean, that's something that we are signatures of.
Yes. That's Resolution 5.
Okay, that is Resolution 5, and that covers both. Okay, that's fine. Because it takes us back to all that detail. So as we modify or note the request for unconditional rights to the $150,000, that can be covered in our minutes. Where is it somehow tell me how that affects these two documents.
It really is, it contemplates an additional document, so I don't know that it does. An additional document that speaks to how that escrowed, the proceeds that again will be paid from Meyer at its closing with Mitchell to Mitchell, how they're accounted for and remitted to the Redevelopment Commission.
Is
I think
that a
that's a new, I think that's a new
developed
piece.
as part of this, or tell me how we get that to that document.
Yes, I think it's developed in conjunction with Meyer and Mitchell.
Okay, so you're going to approach them and
Yes.
see that language is in.
Yes, I'll say the Redevelopment Commission appreciates the sort of backstop function of the remediation agreement. We know that the escrowed proceeds are available for its use to get the site to closure. It has requested and requires that it see the documentation of how those escrowed proceeds will be remitted to the RDC.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for a motion on 5 then?
I believe so.
You ready? Okay. Commissioner Sullivan, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wonder, have we, in either 4 or 5, do we approve the memorandum of understanding?
No, we've included that in the packet because it informs the creation of the plan document that was approved under 4. And really speaks to, it speaks to the remediation agreement as well. So it's a summary of what Meyer has said it would accept in order to relocate to Lawrence. So it's not out there for specific approval. It's really kind of a informative piece.
Well, it just contains an awful lot of detail that seems to me is pretty good. And so the idea here is that the mayor signs this memorandum of understanding without on his authority as mayor. And
at this juncture, we had this concept of a memorandum of understanding or a term sheet. I think I've used that term, so I'm using those interchangeably early on to really document the various pieces of how this deal might work and enable the parties to move forward. At the current juncture, given that we're kind of got to that understanding and then moved directly into the approvals process, I wouldn't say obsolete, but it is, I don't know that the mayor will ever execute it. It really kind of dictates the various pieces that come here.
Meyer will execute it.
Oh, sure.
Because it's got language on escrow in here that gets the job done, I think.
Okay.
But I don't see the language on escrow anywhere else.
Okay.
It isn't perfect, but it seems to get the job done. And if as long as, it's sort of Mitchell, as you explained it, it's sort of Mitchell's.
It really is Mitchell's escrow, yes.
But this commits Meyer to making sure that the escrow comes to us, which is pretty close. Yep. Mr. Chairman, you asked about resolution number 5.
Yes, sir.
President, and I'm prepared to vote on number 5.
You ready to vote on it? Great. Do I hear a motion to approve 5?
So moved.
And do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Sullivan. Thank you for your comments. And all in favor of the resolution's approval by show of hands. Resolution 5 is approved. Gentlemen, we have 1.5 minutes of adoption of special meeting that Cam made reference to earlier to open bid on July 5th for the Trades District. Are we all okay with that meeting at 4 o'clock on June 5th?
I think Commissioner Sullivan is out of
I
town
won't
then.
be able to be physically present for that meeting. And I've asked Mr. Starnes if he could see whether the applicable laws and rules of our commission would permit me to either participate by telephone or provide a proxy, either of which I'm prepared to do. I'm just physically not going to be at a place where I can come to that meeting, but I could participate either by telephone, or I'd be glad to tender a proxy if that's permissible.
Sure. And I don't have an answer on that yet, so I would ask that we go ahead and set the meeting, and then we'll determine if
I certainly wouldn't object
in what form.
opening the bids in my absence either.
Yeah, that's the purpose. Okay. So that being said, everybody's agreeing that we'll have a meeting on the 5th, and we'll get an answer for you. Okay? And Cam, do you have anything else?
Yes, I do. And I would credit Jim Higgins from London Witty Group, who happens to be here today, and I would also, I guess, tender one excuse, being that our council is on essentially paternity leave. If you'll recall, in years past, state law requires that the Redevelopment Commission issue notice to taxing bodies of its intention to capture and keep all increment produced in its allocation areas, as opposed to, I guess the alternative would be passing some of that through to the units, et cetera. Those notices need to go out June 15th. So ideally, if we could vote today to authorize staff and council, who should be returning soon, to issue those notices stating the Redevelopment Commission's intent to capture all the increment that it can from the allocation areas, we will make sure that that gets done in accordance with state law and the deadline there. Again, I had forgotten it's June. The deadline used to be in July. It moved up a couple of years ago, so Jim brought it to my attention. I thought I'd mention it.
Recite the resolution that you'd like us to approve.
Yes, I think the resolution would be an authorization for staff, me, and in conjunction with the Redevelopment Commission's legal counsel, David Johnson, to issue notices stating that the Lawrence Redevelopment Commission intends to capture all available increment from the various allocation areas in Lawrence.
Mr. President, this obviously is critically important that we do that. I think I don't never really researched this, but it seems to me that there may be something more required of us than to just authorize staff to send out notices to that effect, but that we probably as a body ought to take affirmative action that we capture all increment.
No, that's a good point.
That we make the policy determination that we have a need for, under the statutes of the state of Indiana, that we have a need for all of the increment that the allocation area will generate in the relevant period of time, that we make a finding to that extent, and that we direct staff to take all action necessary or advisable under the statutes to assure that all of those entities with which we share the tax base get the notice, and any other action necessary or advisable in the premises.
Good.
I think
that's a good point.
We probably need to make an affirmative finding that we need that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have subsumed that into the authorization. It bears specifically resolving to that.
The other thing I'd like to add, I don't know if the deadline comes before June 5th, but we're going to have a special meeting on June 5th. We could adopt whatever's needed in the next 2 weeks.
Point. I mean, we could put an actual resolution on that date, since we have it, since there will be a meeting then. Which is what we've done in the past. This was really kind of a hurry-up thing because
Do we know if the deadline
we're operating without council.
Why don't we do that?
we know if the deadline predates June 5th?
It's June 15th, I believe.
Yeah.
So we can do that. That is a good suggestion.
Okay.
And shouldn't add much time to, it had been my hope that June 5th would be a very quick meeting. I think it still can be, even if yeah.
Okay. Do I have a signature for resolution 5? Thank you. Okay. And with that, any other business to come before the commission this evening? No, I would entertain a vote or adjourned. Thank you. And